Hello, and welcome to the Sitting on My Ass on My Porch edition of How I Spent the Apocalypse. Now, yesterday, I painted the ceiling of the porch because it badly needed it for a lot of reasons. But I put this ceiling in a few years ago, and I didn't show you me painting the ceiling because how boring would that be? It's just moving shit around so that you can roll the ceiling. Everybody knows how to paint, right? You don't need to learn how to paint. You know, unless you're a total fucking dumbass, you know how to paint. I'm sorry for any of you that are dumbasses. I didn't mean that the way it sounded. Anyway, I built this ceiling a few years ago. It's all made out of pieces, parts. Lynn, pan up and show them the ceiling. Okay, now you're looking at it in a picture, but when you paint something, it doesn't matter how many pieces, parts it is, it kind of gets to a point where you can't tell it's made out of total garbage. This ceiling is literally made out of a bunch of different little pieces, parts. Some of it was actually the set for a play that I wrote, so a good one, that our theater troupe did a few years ago. Part of it was the wood off of pallets, some plywood that we got off these weird pallets. We wound up, the legs were made out of pieces of plywood stuck together. We wound up burning those for firewood. And then this was the pieces that I took off. And then we have some wafer board here left over from a shelving set that I built for Tom. That were pieces that he didn't want that were left over. So we got all that. All right, so it's all made out of pieces, parts. And it's what they call, I painted it, so what color did I paint it? I painted it HooDoo Blue. So what is HooDoo Blue? It's basically sky blue. Why they call it HooDoo Blue? Because all around the South, if you go to the old Victorian houses and you look, you will see that most of them that are using the period paint scheme, their ceilings are painted HooDoo Blue. The Hoodoo witches painted them blue because to confound evil spirits, because it looked like the sky, and they don't like to be in the open sky. Okay, so why did I paint mine HooDoo Blue? Well, this is I put Victorian gingerbread all over this house and made it look like a Victorian. It's not. It's an ancient house, but it's not from the Victorian era. We added all the gingerbread. In fact, Lynn cut a lot of the gingerbread on the house. I cut all the gingerbread on the porch. But that's another story. But at any rate, so why is it sky blue? Because I read an article in National Geographic several years ago. Thank you for weed eating now. Anyway, I read an article several years ago in National Geographic where an entomologist had stayed at a bed and breakfast in Louisiana. And when he sat on their porch, he didn't get eaten by mosquitoes. But when he went to his friend's house and sat on his porch, he did. And he asked the people at the bed and breakfast what they were using to keep the mosquitoes away, and they said nothing. Well, being an entomologist, he looked into it, and he discovered that the same ceiling color for porches that confounds evil spirits, apparently it also fools mosquitoes. So I decided to paint this HooDoo Blue to confound the mosquitoes. And it does. We probably have, not even a quarter as many mosquitoes as we used to have on the porch. So it works. Okay, now if Lynn will pan up, she can show you our hummingbird feeders. I'm talking, so the hummingbirds are kind of staying away. But you'll notice that I painted, and this is why I had to paint the ceiling. I had to paint the ceiling because it needed to be painted. And we actually did an experiment last year where we had the hummingbirds, and we noticed that they all wanted to hang at the feeder that was by the gutter. Well, we wondered if it was because it was that kind of feeder, so we moved another kind of feeder, and they still mostly drank that one out. So we thought that maybe it was because of the sky blue, they weren't happy because they thought they were in the open air and therefore open to predators. So we took pieces of cardboard and I stapled them over each one of the feeders, and then they ate out of them evenly. So we decided, because the cardboard was a mishigas mess, we didn't want that, and bugs got under it and everything else. So I wanted to take it down and then paint the circles. So of course then, and this is what happens in any kind of farm or in any kind of building project. You find usually you have to do 50 other things to get to what you really wanted to do. So I had to move all the furniture, clean the porch, clean up the walls, clean all the shit, paint this ceiling so that I could paint those red dots so we could hang our hummingbird feeders, because now the hummingbirds are here. Okay, all of that. Welcome to life. So at any rate, but that's why there's red circles over the hummingbird feeders, because when it was because we had HooDoo Blue ceiling, the birds also didn't like it. So we did that so that they feel protected, and now they come in and eat at all of the feeders. We watched that already this morning. Okay, if you'll pan down and look at this floor, look at this railing and everything else. I got these at Railroad Damage for $5 a piece, and so I stuck them in the shop and left them there for years until I could afford to do the rest of the porch. These were all made out of scraps. I cut them with my jigsaw, which was a bitch, by the way, because cutting pressure-treated wood with a jigsaw, you burn up a lot of blades. And it's just like slow and tedious, but I did all of those. And if we'll pan down and look at the floor. Okay, so the floor is concrete. It looks ancient. That was on purpose. I wanted it to look like it was at least as old as the house. But also it looks like that because I poured this entire thing, mixing the cement in a wheelbarrow with a hoe, and I poured it by hand. Why would I do that? Because I'm broke. What part of I'm broke do you not understand? That's what you do. If you want to have things, nice things, and you don't have any money, you make do. You figure out a way to do it. Concrete is cheap. At the time I poured this, concrete was literally less than $2 a bag. Now there's a lot of bags of concrete in this, but guess what? I got to pour it in sections. So as I got the money, I finished the porch. So I poured the first section, which is where we walk in. I poured it first. I waited till I had more money and poured the second one, and so on and so forth. The whole time I was putting back stuff to build the roof and all the joists and all that. I just kept buying things on sale when they're on sale, things that I could afford, junk that I could use, and putting them back constantly until I had enough to build the whole thing. Because you want to build a roof, you need to do it all in one week, which is what I did. I did the entire porch. After I poured it, it took me weeks to pour this, and then I built everything else in a week, including putting the roof on. So, but I slowly saved up the stuff. That's how you make do. Okay, so now I'm going to do something that several of you that are fans of my work have asked me to do, and I'm like, I'm not doing a reading. That will bore the shit out of the readers. But I realized in the time of the apocalypse that I wrote a book called Hammertown, which is a world. What are you doing, Lynn?
I can't see it.
Damn it, Lynn!
I cannot see the book. See? Hammertown.
Okay. So I wrote this book, Hammertown. I'm going to give you, I was going to do this ass backwards, but now I'm going to tell you when the copyright for this book is October 2002, which means I actually wrote the book probably 2 years before that. This is why I always tell young writers when they say, well, if I write to the current trend, will I sell my book? It's like, no, because by the time you get done writing the book and it comes out, that will no longer be the current trend. So that will not make you $1 bazillion. I'm very sorry. But I realized that there are, this book takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. And So I'm just going to read you a small section from it, and then we'll talk about that. After the Great Plague of 2050, I'm off by 30 years. After the Great Plague of 2050, the world had forever changed. She'd, talking about the lead character, never known that world, but she'd read about it. Technology had flourished. The computer age was in full swing and making new advances every day. The world was badly overpopulated because it seemed that some people thought it was God's own will that they spit out as many children as possible. As had been predicted, a deadly virus was born, one that no medicine could fight. The pandemic swept the poorer nations and areas of the heaviest populations. 2/3 of the world's population died. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. That changed everything. In the wake of so much death, the mega corporations, which already own most of the world, managed to grab everything they didn't already have. Humanity conveniently forgot the problems of overpopulation, misuse of the land, and overextending resources, blaming human contact for the plague instead. The population embraced technology and used it to keep each other and the world at bay. Let's hope that doesn't happen either. Let's hope that social distancing is something that goes away when we have a cure or a vaccine. You have to realize that spec fic writers, what we do is we look at the current information and then we draw a story from that. Since there had been no major epidemic since that time, they assumed that their calculations were correct. It never dawned on them that overpopulation and the subsequent pollution of waterways and food products had caused the plague in the first place. That there had been no plague since because with only minimal human contact and the complexity of how babies were now conceived, born, and cared for, there was no chance of overpopulation. The building district where she now stood was a product of the environment of fear of a returning plague and mechanical achievement. Simply put, in the minds of the survivors, human contact and world travel had caused the plague. With the new strides in computer technology and robotics, there was no need to travel or to have anything more than minimal human contact. Follow that thinking 100 years down the road, and you came to a freight city, building district population, complete shut-ins, who never walked in direct sunlight or breathed anything but filtered air. The most exercise they got was when they stepped off their moving walkway into the parking garage and called for their car. Many of them, maybe even most, never even got that far. They worked, ate, slept, and lived, if you could call it that, without ever leaving their floor, much less the building. Corporations ran everything, including the city governments and police agencies. Everything now centered on the almighty dollar. So, is this just a shameless plug for my book? Well, yes and no. I wouldn't have to shamelessly plug my book if people had bought it in the freaking first place, and I wouldn't have to pour a fucking slab by hand. But mostly I did it to point something else out. I have no formal education. What I have because I made do. I wanted to be educated. There was never any money to make sure that I could go to college, ever. So I taught myself by reading. Shock! I knew a pandemic was imminent. I knew what was going to cause that pandemic. And I knew what was going to happen because of it. I hope I'm wrong. Like I said, I hope the social distancing thing goes away when we have a cure. But if I knew, certainly our leaders should have known. And certainly they could have better protected us. This is my point. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to find a way to make do at this time. We have to find a way to fix the problems in our lives ourselves, because even the people that know are not necessarily looking out for us. We got to make it happen. And we can. How can we do it? By seeing what we've got instead of what we don't have. by using the things that other people throw away. Now, at this time, clean them first or leave them set in your yard first. I'm still dumpster diving. When people put out right now is a great time to dumpster dive, in fact, because everybody's bored and they're cleaning their shops. Now, if you're like me, all of your friends know that you're the junk queen, and they bring this stuff to me. I've now had 2 friends that have cleaned their shops and their outbuildings and brought me pickup truck loads of garbage that I can use. Okay? But if you haven't been known as the junk queen, right now there are all kinds of places. If you drive up and down the road, which is still fairly safe to do. Now, around here, people have a habit of they'll put out free signs on a stack of trash that they don't want. Okay? But just putting it curbside by the trash cans means they don't want it. Wear your masks, wear your rubber gloves, grab that stuff, bring it home. Underneath this ceiling, as a vapor barrier, I didn't use tarps. I didn't buy this queen. Underneath this is feed sacks, plastic feed sacks. That's what I used as a vapor barrier. The insulation underneath this ceiling, I didn't buy it. The insulation under this ceiling is styrofoam egg cartons, pieces of styrofoam crating, old fish and tackle boxes, every kind of styrofoam piece that my friends, styrofoam peanuts. And yet now when we sit on our porch, it's nice and cool. We can get through this. We don't have to have this post-apocalyptic world. We can just wait this out. And when it's over, be in a little better shape from now on. Because we realize we don't need the corporations. They need us. I want to thank all of you who have been watching. It means a world to me. I hope that you're getting anything out of it at all. If you have any questions for me, put them on my comment page. I'll try to answer them. Hell, I'll make it up if I don't know. Goodbye and thank you.